Before empires rose, there was only the land between the rivers, a cradle of life, divided by war. City fought against city, brother against brother. Sumer was a mosaic of fractured power.
But within the court of Kish, a servant watched. A cupbearer who would become a king.
Destiny is not given, it is taken. Sargon seized power, not just to rule a city, but to change the world.
He forged a new kind of weapon, a professional army. Disciplined, loyal, lethal. With the composite bow, they could strike from a distance, breaking the enemy lines before they even engaged.
One by one, the ancient cities fell. Uruk, Ur, Lagash. The walls of Sumer crumbled.
For the first time, a single will united the fractured states.
Lugals, the old kings, were humbled. Sargon was no longer just a king. He was the king of kings.
To mark this new age, he built a new capital, Agade, the shining center of the world's first empire. Sargon did not disband his army. 5,400 men ate daily before him, the world's first standing army.
He broke the old lineage. The sons of Akkad were appointed as governors, replacing the rebellious Sumerian nobility.
To rule an empire, one must measure it. A centralized system of land and tax was imposed upon the conquered city-states. Communication is the sinew of power. Royal messengers ran the roads, carrying the king's word from Agade to the Persian Gulf.
A new language rose to dominance. Akkadian became the language of administration and diplomacy, unifying the diverse peoples.
Art shifted from the abstract to the physical. Akkadian seals depicted muscular heroes and wild beasts, reflecting the strength of the new empire.
To bind the souls of his people, Sargon appointed his daughter, Enheduanna, as high priestess at Ur. She was the first named author in history. Through her hymns, she merged the Sumerian and Akkadian gods.
Metallurgy reached new heights. The lost wax technique created bronze statues of startling realism, immortalizing the king's image.
The king's face was sent to every corner of the realm. To see the statue was to see the king himself.
Agade became the quay of the world. Ships from Dilmun, Magan, and Meluha docked at its piers.
Wealth flowed up the river. Carnelian from the Indus, lapis from Afghanistan, timber from the cedar forest.
Tribute fueled the empire. The wealth of the conquered built the glory of the conqueror. Food was power. By controlling the grain surplus, the state controlled the survival of its subjects. Sargon washed his weapons in the Upper Sea and the Lower Sea. He claimed dominion over the 4 quarters of the world.
But an empire built by the sword is fragile. Sargon prepared his sons for the burden of absolute power. To build the new, the old must be erased. The monuments of rival kings were dismantled or repurposed.
The changes at the top rippled down to the hearth.
A new Akkadian identity began to emerge among the common people.
Peace brought prosperity. For a time, the curse of constant war was lifted from the land.
Agade was the wonder of the age. But the sun that rises must eventually set.
Sargon, the king of battle, eventually fell to the greatest enemy, death.
Upon Sargon's death, the wolves attacked. The Sumerian cities rose in revolt, testing the new king, Rimush.
Rimush ruled by the sword. He crushed the revolts with ruthless efficiency, slaughtering thousands to hold his father's legacy. But tyranny breeds treachery. Rimush faced no army on the battlefield, but was murdered by his own courtiers with their cylinder seals.
His brother, Manishtushu, took the throne. He sought to stabilize the empire through trade and commerce rather than just blood.
He consolidated power by buying land, recording the transactions on great obelisks of black diorite.
The empire looked outward. Manishtushu launched fleets across the Lower Sea, securing the copper mines that fed the Bronze Age.
Yet he too fell to the dagger of betrayal. The house of Sargon seemed destined to consume itself. From the chaos rose the grandson, Naram-Sin. The great revolt broke out. Every city, every vassal turned against him at once. It was a war against the world.
Naram-Sin did not hide behind walls. He marched out to meet them, crushing 9 battles in a single year. He pushed the borders further than any before him, scaling the Zagros Mountains to punish the barbarian tribes. Victory was absolute. The empire was secure. And Naram-Sin made a choice that changed history. He declared himself divine. No longer just a servant of the gods, he became the god of Akkad, wearing the horned helmet of divinity. He commissioned his masterpiece, the Victory Stele, a monument to his own glory, rising above mortals and gods alike. In the tablets of the empire, the star sign of divinity was written before his name. The king had become a god. He rebuilt the temple of Enlil at Nippur, claiming the favor of the chief god, cementing his rule over the spiritual heart of the land. Under the God King, the empire reached its zenith. Tribute flowed from the Sylvan Mountains. It was a golden age of administration and knowledge. The Akkadian language unified the mind of the empire.
He was the king of the 4 quarters. But in his hubris, he may have angered forces greater than himself.
Akkad was the jewel of the world. Its palace was not just a home for the king, but the administrative heart of the first true empire. Wealth poured in from the edges of the known world, from the gold mines of Egypt to the ivory workshops of the Indus Valley. To bind the economy, Naram-Sin standardized weights and measures. The gur became the universal unit. Ishtar, the goddess of war and desire, was the patron of Agade. Her temple, the Eulmash, shone like the sun. The empire was held together by iron. Massive fortresses garrisoned professional soldiers in every conquered province. The state managed the waters. Canals were dredged and expanded, turning the arid plain into the breadbasket of the ancient world. They did not destroy Sumerian culture, they absorbed it. Bilingual tablets preserved the old knowledge while spreading the new language. Artistic revolution accompanied political power. The Akkadian style was dynamic, realistic, celebrating the physical perfection of the human form. Naram-Sin was the final judge. His word was not just law, it was divine will. The bureaucracy was relentless. Every governor served at the pleasure of the king, their loyalty ensured by the seal of Agade. Agade was a melting pot. For the first time, people identified not just with their city, but with the empire. They watched the skies for signs of Ishtar's favor, mapping the heavens with a precision that would guide future empires. Music and poetry flourished in the court, celebrating the deeds of the God King. Even the ancient kingdom of Elam bowed. Treaties were signed in Akkadian, making it the first lingua franca of the Middle East. They reached the cedar forest and the silver mountain, extracting the resources needed to build monuments to their own greatness.
Women in Akkad held rights to property and business, driving the economic engine of the empire.
The empire seemed invincible. Its walls were high, its granaries full, its armies undefeated. But pride goeth before a fall. Priests whispered of a curse, the curse of Agade. They said the gods had turned their backs on the God King.
And in the Zagros Mountains, a new storm was gathering. The Gutians, a people who knew no kings, only plunder.
God King Naram-Sin died, leaving the world to his son, Shar-Kali-Shari. But the favor of the gods was shifting.
The climate itself turned against them. The rains failed. The sun became a hammer, striking the earth without mercy. The great canals, the lifelines of the empire, began to dry up. The 4.2 winds from the north brought dust instead of rain. The curse of Agade was manifesting not as magic, but as ecological collapse. Hunger erodes loyalty. As the granaries emptied, the people of Akkad began to look at their king not with worship, but with desperation. Prices soared. A bag of silver could no longer buy a basket of barley. The economy, once the envy of the world, stalled.
Sensing weakness, the Gutians descended from the mountains. They did not fight open battles. They raided, burned, and vanished.
The king received letters from every corner. The Gutians are in the fields. The Amorites are at the gates. There is no grain.
Shar-Kali-Shari tried to stem the tide. He built Repeller of the Amorites, a great wall to keep the nomads at bay.
But walls cannot stop the wind. The omens remained dark. The gods had left the building.
Great projects were abandoned. The empire no longer had the surplus to build for eternity.
The edges frayed first. Elam declared independence. The empire was shrinking back to the city of Akkad itself.
As the countryside became a lawless zone of Gutian raids, the people fled to the cities, straining the already failing food supply.
Shar-Kali-Shari fought bravely, year after year, but he was fighting the inevitable.
The religious authority collapsed. The priests of Nippur declared that Enlil had judged the house of Sargon and found it wanting.
The king of the four quarters was now just the king of Akkad.
And then, the final blow. Shar-Kali-Shari, the last great king, fell, leaving no clear heir.
Chaos ensued. The Sumerian king list records the confusion with a famous line. Who was king? Who was not king?
While the Akkadians fought each other, the Gutian dragon descended from the mountains. Akkad stood alone. The end of the First Empire was at hand.
Gutians, described as the dragons of the mountain, surrounded the city. They knew no civilized warfare, only brute force.
Inside the walls, the curse took its toll. Grain was gone. The people flailed in the dust, hunger gnawing at the heart of the empire. The siege did not last long. The hunger weakened the defenders, and the gates groaned under the weight of the assault.
The gates of Akkad, which had welcomed the wealth of the world, now opened to its destruction.
Chaos flooded the streets. The disciplined phalanxes of Sargon were useless in the narrow, panic-filled alleyways. They did not fear the gods of Akkad. The temples were looted, the statues toppled, the sanctuaries defiled. They took the face of the king and gouged out his eyes. They wanted to blind the memory of Sargon forever.
The wisdom of the age was fed to the fire. Ironically, the flames baked the clay tablets harder.
The smoke of Akkad rose to the heavens, a dark offering to Enlil, who had finally taken his revenge.
Morning came, but the empire was gone. The sun rose on a graveyard of ambition.
Gutians ruled, but they did not know how to govern. They knew only how to take.
Without the king's engineers, the canals clogged with silt. The desert began to creep back into the gardens. A survivor wrote the Lamentation of Akkad, a poem of despair that would be copied for centuries. The city was not just destroyed, it was erased. Its location was forgotten, lost to the shifting sands. The man who claimed to be a god became a stepping stone for grazing herds. The final blow was not war, but water. The Euphrates shifted its course.
Dust returned to dust. The walls that defied the world disappeared beneath the dunes. The Gutians were eventually driven out. A new Sumerian dynasty rose at Ur, building upon the ashes of Akkad. They hated Akkad, yet they copied its stories. The legend of Sargon became a model for every emperor who followed.
And so, Akkad vanished. The First Empire became a ghost. The city died, but the language lived. For 2,000 years, Akkadian remained the language of law.
When Babylon rose, King Hammurabi took Sargon's title. He modeled his laws and his conquests on the first emperor.
The idea that the king was the shepherd of the people, chosen by the gods to uphold justice, was an Akkadian invention.
1,000 years later, the fierce Assyrians rose. Their king took the name Sargon II. In the great library of Nineveh, the legend of Sargon was preserved. A story of a baby set adrift in a basket in the river.
Long before Moses, there was Sargon, the secret child, placed in a basket of rushes, sealed. He was found by a humble gardener. The story reminded every emperor that power comes from the gods, not just from blood.
The monuments of Akkad were so powerful that conquerors stole them. The Elamites took Naram-Sin's stele to Susa.
They mapped the world. To the Akkadians, the world was a disk surrounded by a bitter river, a geography that shaped the mind of the Bible.
Commerce requires trust. The weights and measures standardized in Akkad were used for millennia, the ancestors of our own systems. Technology of war did not regress. The composite bow, the phalanx, the siegecraft. Akkad taught the world how to fight.
The royal road, the idea that a king's command could travel faster than a storm. The Persians perfected it, but the Akkadians invented it.
They taught us to fear the future. The library of omens, predicting the fall of kings from the...
Hedwana's voice was never silenced. Her hymns became the standard prayers of the ancient world, recited for centuries after her death. Akkadian was the first Semitic empire. It spread a language family that would eventually give birth to Aramaic, Hebrew, and Arabic.
Even Cyrus the Great, 2,000 years later, claimed the title King of Sumer and Akkad. The stones crumble. The bronze corrodes. The physical city of Akkad is lost.
It remains the holy grail of archaeology. Akkad is the only imperial capital that has never been found.
We know them only by their art, the perfection of their seals, the realism of their bronze. The victory stele stands silent. The god-king is trapped in stone, forever ascending his mountain.
It began with one man, Sargon, the cupbearer who dared to dream of a world without borders.
He forged the machine of war. For the first time, men marched not as a mob, but as an army.
He built a bureaucracy of clay. Every grain, every field, every life was recorded, measured, and taxed. Then came the hubris. Naram-Sin, who reached for the stars and declared himself a god walking among men.
But empires are fragile things. Built on blood, they can be washed away by rain or buried by sand.
Kings are gone. The armies are dust. But the rivers remain, flowing indifferent to the ambitions of men. The life of the common man returned to the rhythm of the seasons. Empires rise and fall, but the harvest must go on.
The material of their greatness was simple mud. From the earth they rose, and to the earth they returned.
They left us the written word, the ability to speak across millenniums, to tell us, I was here. Ishtar still watches from the heavens, the morning star and the evening star, the goddess of the empire that loved her.
They imprinted their identity on history. The concept of the empire, a single rule over many peoples, was their invention.
The walls of Akkad are lost. No map can lead you to its gates. It is the Atlantis of the desert.
But the face remains, damaged, blinded, yet defiant. The face of absolute power.
From this small spot between the rivers, a ripple spread that touched Babylon, Assyria, Persia, and Rome.
Today, shepherds walk over the palaces of kings, unaware of the ghosts beneath their feet.
The sun sets on the age of Akkad.
But the questions it asked remain. How do we rule? How do we unite? And how do we survive our own ambition?
History is a cycle of rising and falling. Akkad was the first to rise, and it was the first to fall. But the rivers flow on, carrying the memory of the king of the four quarters. This was Akkad,
the First Empire.